There we go. If you can do the mouse.
Okay. All right. So again, Ty Lasher, City Manager, and Andrew Nave with Greater Wichita Partnership is not here today. So he was going to talk a little bit about the priorities and such of the Greater Wichita Partnership. But since he's not here, I'm going to skip it. So a little bit about Bel Aire. We're a young city, incorporated in 1980. Current population about 8,200. Have a medium household income of close to 85,000. We've seen a 20% population growth, as many cities have. Last year, we built about 330 new homes. So most of it's been residential. So this is our boundaries. We're basically up northeast. We've got some great neighbors, Keachai, Park City, Wichita is a neighbor. And we actually annexed 280s this year because of development and the things that are happening in our neck of the woods. So the big thing that I'm here to talk about is Integra selecting Bel Aire for their $1.8 billion semiconductor facility. Something that's probably another time and discussion, but actually Bob Layton and I had a lot of talk back and forth when they were looking at Wichita and Bel Aire, and probably a unique situation that we actually kind of work together and we're supporting each other on this. So it's a good way that cities can actually work together in economic development. But this is kind of the drawing of what they're going to do in Bel Aire. So this is their layout. Rock Road is on the left there, 254 is on the north. The whole site's about 130 acres. There's 2 phases that they're looking at building, and then you can see we've got a developer that's purchased to the right the additional 160 acres for future development. So a little bit about Integra. They're the largest outsourced semiconductor assembly test service provider in the U.S. So they do a lot of work using unusual materials, testing. They're relatively new, founded in 1980. They're an employee-owned and ESOP. Currently, they've got about 550 employees. They actually have a second location in Silicon Valley, so we're lucky that they chose to expand here in Kansas. I did a little bit about them. They were awarded the $490 million Apex incentives. Only one of those are awarded a year. I think it expires next year through the state of Kansas. So the DeSoto Panasonic plant got one and got the award in 2022, and Integra got the award for this year. They do need CHIPS funding. So you may have heard of that. The federal legislation has about $200 billion in CHIPS funding. And in order for them to actually make this work, they need that funding. So they've already sent in their initial, this is of course the federal government, you all work with them through WAMPO, and you know how they are. So there's actually 2 application processes. You have to send in a pre-app and then your formal app. And they sent in their pre-app. They've already received some positive feedback. They found out they're the only OSAT that applied for funding. So the other ones are chip manufacturers. So they're the only ones that do testing and packaging. So that's a very positive. They needed the APAC's funding. And then they received incentives from Bel Aire and Sedgwick County as well. And then they're going to invest over $1 billion of their own money. They've estimated, or Greater Wichita Partnership has estimated about a $450 million annual economic impact. So in order to get the Apex funding, they had to create at least 1,000 new jobs and have $1 billion in capacity to actually be eligible for the Apex funding. This is a little bit about the Apex, tool that the state did, and Andrew was going to talk about that. So, and this is where it was 2021 to 2023 is for-profit companies had to invest at least $1 billion. The great thing that's for our region is, as part of this Apex funding, they can choose up to 5 qualified suppliers who will get the same incentive as well. So our goal is that they bring not only their expansion, but they'll bring 5 suppliers with them. Phase 1, they produce chips and test and package. They're building a 1 million square foot building. They'll have at least 2,000 employees. They're putting in a 20-acre solar field. They're going to have a daycare on site. They're going to have a cafeteria on site. They're going to have a 100,000 square foot training center. Their plan was to break ground in October of this year. The Apex funding requires them to break ground this year at some point. So if they get the CHIPS funding, they will start construction before the end of the year. Their plan is to be open, operating in 2025. They're actually, the neat thing is the Northeast Magnet High School is located just to the south of them, and they're already partnering with the high school. One of their, as a magnet, one of their primary focuses is engineering. And so they're going to actually probably put a sidewalk in for kids to go over from the Northeast Magnet to do intern and learn about computer processing and chip manufacturing. And hopefully that's where they'll get some of their future employees, is from the high school. So that's a great thing for the area. Of course, they're working very closely with WSU Tech. Phase 2, they hope to start that in 2032. So about 7 years, 5 to 7 years later, phase 2 will go in. That's adding another 1 million square foot, and that'll bring their total to about 5,000 employees. And that'll take an additional $1 billion investment that they'll make. So as far as the incentives, Bel Aire, we had to do a 10-year IRB, which everybody typically does. We're going to create a TIF district. We've got some separate economic development incentives that last for 15 years. The county stepped up with some workforce funding of $500,000. Bel Aire is putting $250,000. So in total, they're getting about 35 years worth of incentives from Bel Aire. So some of the things we're going to have to do is we need to do a traffic study. Rock Road, you notice they were right along Rock Road. So we're going to need to improve that to at least a 3-lane. Webb Road's going to need some improvements. It's already a 4-lane, but probably needs some turn lanes. Got water and sewer mains. We're looking at possibly a new public safety building with some fire, police and EMS. There'll be a frontage road along 254. And then again, we had to put some cash for a workforce development grant. So when we talk about regionalism, this is proof of how regional Bel Aire is, and really the metro. We did this a few years ago before Integra announced, but we have Sunflower Commerce Park that's located at 53rd and Webb. And phase 1 is about completed. About 525 employees work there. And you can see they travel from 21 cities. And of that, only 31 live in Bel Aire. So when we talk about regionalism and the impact that suppliers or companies like Integra, the majority of it benefits not Bel Aire, but the region. So that's something that really opened our eyes when we were looking at regionalism. So if we take that workforce that Integra is bringing and use those same figures from that 525, the El Dorado will get probably at least 20. Keachai will get 20. We'll get about 150, and Wichita is going to get 1,400. So again, that's the importance that, and of course, every city here is going to get some of those because there were 25 cities that were located, that were listed. So that's how important a business like Integra is to this region, not just Bel Aire. We're only going to get a small minority of them living in Bel Aire. The rest of the region is going to reap a lot of benefits. So again, they need the CHIPS funding. If they can't get the CHIPS funding, they won't be able to expand. So this will not happen. We're going to create a TIF district. We're looking at our utility needs. We've already hired PEC to do that for us. And then we're going to need some street improvements, not only in Bel Aire, but along the 254 corridor. So what we're looking at, and actually the mayor and I were spent yesterday in Topeka talking to the governor and lieutenant governor, going over these same things about partnerships we're going to need with the state and the county here and other cities. But 254 is probably going to 254 and Webb's probably going to need an interchange, and looking at about $25 million. The key is that the challenge is we've got to get all this done in 2 years, because they want to be up and running in 2 years from the date they break ground. So this is what it looks like today. It's a at-grade intersection. You can see the cars backed up there. And this is just your typical day. This is without adding 2,000 to 5,000 employees trying to get on 254 from Webb. And of course, this is what we see all too often. We were talking about crashes earlier. KDOT did a traffic study from 2013, 2019, and there were 7 deaths just in that time period at that intersection. K254 and Rock, probably looking at an interchange or possibly an overpass. And again, that'll need to be done. There already is a frontage road on the north side between Rock and Woodlawn. Woodlawn's got an interchange. Here's the current condition. Again, you can see it's backed up. I mentioned that USD 259 has the northeast magnet. You can see on the bottom picture, there's buses actually crossing Rock Road there. And again, these people are driving 75, 80 miles an hour. And this is what we see all too often. In that 2013, 2019 time period, there's been 3 deaths. You can see 35 crashes. And then Greenwich, we're also looking at that. It's a little bit farther out, but probably an overpass there as well is going to have to be considered. Again, an at-grade intersection. This is the deadliest intersection with 7 deaths in that time period, 45 crashes. We're going to look at a frontage road because if we put overpasses in, we'll need frontage roads to get to the interchanges. So we've got an interchange at Woodlawn. Rock has an overpass. There'll be a frontage road that goes in there. The city actually kept right away. You can see that that green area that we actually own that we can donate to the project to help with the cost. Here's the frontage road that's already in on Keachai, which is on the north side for their industrial park. So that's already there. Rock Road, obviously it's basically a county road, two lane standard road with open ditches. We're going to have to go to a minimum of three lanes. And we'll have to expand it probably from 254 all the way to 37. So we're going to have some discussions with the city of Wichita because Rock is a 5-lane up to 37th, and it drops to a 2-lane through Willow Bend, and then Bel Aire picks it up as a 3-lane that can really cause some congestion through there. So those will be some fun discussions that we may have to have with a residential neighborhood. But anyway, some of the ways that we're going to be looking for WAMPO support, Rock Road at this point hasn't even been on the long-range transportation plan, but it's probably going to have to be moved up because of all the economic development that's going to be taking shape there. Webb Road, we're going to need some turn lanes and stuff. Part of that's actually in Sedgwick County, so we'll have to be working with the county on that. Our meeting yesterday with the secretary, KDOT secretary, they're looking at least an interchange at Webb, maybe an overpass at Rock and Greenwich. Local consults are this fall, which timing wise, that's good. But we're going to be looking for WAMPO and all of the regional cities to support some of these improvements. That was something that they said was such a feather in the cap of our region was the North bypass, how everybody supported that. And that really got that improved. So we're going to be asking for your support for this, as well as the K254 corridor. They've been very supportive as well for the whole corridor. So with that, open it up to questions. Anybody has any questions, be happy to answer.
Yeah, questions for Ty, Councilmember Fry.
Hi, thank you, Ty, for the presentation. If you could go back to your very first slide where you showed the project site with the future development to the east. What was the divider in the middle? Nope. There. Is that Webb Road in the middle?
No, so Rock Road is all the way, is on the left. That's where they're actually butting. Webb is over here.
On the far right.
Yeah, on the far right. And that's so that there's a frontage road. And I think that's just a road that they were looking at platting between the two developments. So, but yeah.
And is the development on the east more residential, industrial? Has it been determined, or is that just?
That is all zoned as industrial. So it will be commercial. Now to the south of that is residential. But this whole 320 acres is zoned industrial.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions for Ty? Thank you for a great presentation. It's very interesting, and we look forward to having all the economic development that it'll bring to this region. So thank you for your time today. I know you're very busy with all the work you're doing right now in Bel Aire. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
Have a great day.